Welcome to Journey to Authenticity, the podcast designed to help you become your true authentic self, create a clear vision for life, and ultimately step into a life of transformation. I'm your host, Braiden Belnap. I'm a transformation life coach, speaker, and entrepreneur dedicated to helping you do just that, transform your life. Today, we're going to be jumping into purpose, passion, and the pursuit of not giving up. But what if your passion and purpose feel so out of reach that you are wondering if you should give up? Maybe you're even wondering whether you should even start. You're questioning whether you're capable of it. Maybe you're in a situation, your surroundings with family, friends, society as a whole, whether you wonder whether it's possible. Maybe you've reached an age where you question whether it's truly for you now. That's exactly why we're bringing on Tyler Stokes today, because he's done just that. He's overcome struggles with family. He's overcome struggles with friends. He's overcome struggles with himself. And through the pursuit of that and being brought up in an abusive household, he's found food, being able to become a chef. And naturally, through leaning in, he started restaurants. And here in Utah, he has a major cultural influence with what he's done. With that in mind, welcome to the show, Tyler.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Shout out to Michael McHenry for connecting us, right?
Yep. Fantastic. He's a connector. That's what he does.
You guys have been partners for a very long time.
We have since 2018. So we're going on 7 years.
That's amazing. I'm sure amazing friendships have been built over that time frame.
Yep, absolutely.
So just to jump straight into things.
Yeah.
You're obviously a very talented chef, restaurateur. You'll say that word much better than me.
Yeah.
But what inspired you to become a chef initially?
You know, that's an interesting story. I never dreamed that that was even a possibility of a job. I grew up in Wyoming, very small town. 80 people were in my graduating class. And, I had my eyes set on first being a doctor. Then I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I wanted to be a stockbroker and get into economics and finance. And that's kind of where I put my focus was business. My family moved from Wyoming to Cache Valley when I was 16. Kind of uprooted everything I had. I hated it. I was devastated. But that being said, moved to Cache Valley, kind of got in a little bit of trouble. I left all my friends in Wyoming, had to have a new start in Idaho. It was a much different environment. It was in the Preston, Idaho, where Napoleon Dynamite was filmed. He was actually a year younger than me, the director. But that was kind of where I landed for my last year and a half of high school. But I ended up stumbling into a restaurant that a few of my friends worked at. And they had mentioned to me that how much they liked it. And I just like cooking. Like, what do you mean? Like, working at a drive-in, making burgers and shakes. But this was a nicer restaurant. And I checked out a little bit. Didn't actually start. But then I come home to my parents' house, and there's a gentleman there who's wearing a Grateful Dead tie-dye. And I was also wearing a Grateful Dead tie-dye. And he's connected. He's like, oh, what's going on? And I found out he was in my parents' ward. I kind of left the church already at 16, rebelling. We can get into that a little bit later. But he owned that restaurant. And he kind of pulled me aside, talked to me, and gave me his story, which was quite a story of being a former drug addict, all kinds of things going on, former deadhead, really into just a life that would have ended up killing him. He met his wife, converted the church, a bunch of things happened. Anyway, he kind of started restaurants to help people like me at that time. He offered me a job. I accepted. I went in. Within the first week, I was just absolutely in love with the environment, the people, the absolute chaos of a restaurant. Anthony Bourdain talks about how restaurants are basically a group of pirates, vagabonds, rebels, and that's what drew him to the restaurant business and kept him thriving there for his entire life. And, I love that it's rock and roll, it's loud, it's also glamorous. And I was good at it right away. Moved up the ranks, became a sous chef, started running one of his new restaurants he opened up in Logan. And
Logan, Utah?
Yeah, because we moved to Cache Valley. So Preston's on the Idaho side, and Logan is on the Utah side. It's kind of the state line goes right down the middle. Okay. As soon as I turned 21, I moved to Park City and continued my journey. But within the first couple weeks of my initial cooking job, I loved that I had found something I loved to do. I really admired my chef there at the time. And I was I set the dream. I'm going to have my own restaurant. I want to be able to help people, help kids like me now find purpose, a place where they're accepted, can thrive, be successful. And I set my sights on it and worked my way and opened my first restaurant at the age of 30. So I didn't go to school, just all apprenticed, worked my way up, worked for a lot of fantastic chefs, had some great jobs, some great opportunities. And it's been an incredible journey. You know, I've loved every day, every challenge, every success. It's been amazing. So, you know, you're successful no matter how much money you make if you're doing something you love to do, and you're allowed to do that. So it was, I think the universe just gave me a gift, and I took it.
And you took it. That's amazing. Do you still have that restaurant that you opened up at 30?
No, nope. I worked around Park City, Utah, and Salt Lake, all over here. I got married for the first time when I was 27. I've always been in love with Sun Valley, Idaho, and Ketchum. I've had a lot of good friends up there. Me and my ex-wife went up there to visit some friends. And a friend of mine was the executive chef of one of my favorite restaurants up there. And him and I had worked together in Salt Lake in the past. And we were having some drinks, having dinner, and he introduced me to another restaurant owner up there who said, "Hey, I need a chef. Would you be willing to come up here and accept this job?" And she gave me a great offer. It was, close to a 40% increase in what I was making here. And I was the chef de cuisine at Promontory in Park City, helped open all the restaurants at that golf course. And that was a great job here. But me and my ex-wife talked about it. Great opportunity. Yeah, let's do it. So I moved up there, ran her restaurant for about 4 years, made it a much more successful restaurant every year. I had a big fan base up there, and I opened my first restaurant in Ketchum, Idaho, called Dashi. And it was a small, beautiful restaurant right on the main Sun Valley Road, if you're familiar with Ketchum. The restaurant business is hard, and it took a really big toll on my first marriage, for sure. I was working 80-hour weeks, 9, 10 in the morning until midnight, sometimes 6 days a week. We had one young child, and just started to get pregnant. We just got pregnant with our second when I opened Dashi, and ended up just not being able to make it. So my ex-wife moved back to Salt Lake with my kids, and that basically forced me to have to get closer. It was unfortunate because that was within, the first year of opening Dashi. So for the next 2 years, every other weekend, every 10 days, I was driving 5.5 hours each way, picking up my kids, going to my parents in Smithfield up by Logan, or staying in a hotel here in Salt Lake with them. And I did that for about 2 years. During that time, I was looking for a spot here. Happened to stumble onto where Provisions is now, and I got a close connection with that place. It used to be a restaurant called Lugano, and I actually worked there. Started there in 2001 as a part-time cook during the off-season with my Park City chef jobs, and loved that place. I think that was the best Italian restaurant that had been in Utah up to that point. Honestly, I don't think there's one here that has reached the heights that Lugano did. And the beautiful space. I'm not sure if you've been to Provisions, but it's a house that's been turned into a restaurant. A couple different reiterations. Lugano opened in 2000 and was there until 2014 when we took over the building, and Greg moved on, and we were able to open Provisions. So I closed Dashi at the end of our lease, took everything we had there, all the equipment, chairs, tables, everything, brought it down here, open provisions, which is similar, not quite as Asian as dashi, but I use a lot of Asian flavors in all my cooking, but it's a little bit more modern American. But unfortunately, we had to close dashi.
That's fair.
It was a much better move in general, which I think the universe just tends to do that. Utah's a much better place for growth. We came at a perfect time to get ready for kind of what became somewhat of a restaurant movement and renaissance. It started in around 2010 with Pago opening up initially, and then a few others, and then we got in at the right time, and it's been building ever since. But yeah, restaurants are hard. So, most people have at least a couple failures under their belts. Though that dashi was a wild success, I just couldn't be away from my kids.
Hats off for you for making that choice. You were chasing your dream, right? You were a year into it. At the end of the day, pivots are necessary for success. And as far as I'm concerned, I call it that. Like, it's a pivot. Like, a failure to me is when you just stop.
Yeah.
That wasn't a sign to stop.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
It was an opportunity to pivot to make what you're doing better. And look where you're at now.
Yeah, exactly. It was a much better opportunity. I still have a lot of close relationships with my customers in Idaho. I go up and do parties a couple times a year for a couple families that have been big supporters. And that's right. And to me, it would have been much more of a failure to not be there for my kids.
Absolutely.
That was the most important thing. And, I didn't give up on my dream or restaurants. It just, like you said, pivoted and morphed into provisions, which became a much better opportunity, which in turn connected me with lots of people in this market that I hadn't known previous to moving to Ketchum, Michael being one of them. And I was able to kind of get on the steps to scaling and growing, which is what one of his major talents and passions.
Absolutely. So I'm curious. I want to bring it back to you were moving, and you mentioned you got in some trouble, left the church. Did you leave the church before you got in trouble, or was that like take us through that story?
Okay. Yeah, I was raised LDS. Everyone in Star Valley, Wyoming, especially in the small town of Bedford, was LDS. If you weren't, you were like a freak. Everyone, you were like, people were like, whoa, they're a bit scared of you. So everyone was LDS. That's all I ever knew. It just seemed to be the world. When we moved to Cache Valley, I had, been uprooted from my friends, had to leave my new girlfriend at the time. I was on my way to having a full ride scholarship to the University of Wyoming for economics. We had just won a national competition at the Chicago Stock Exchange for business and stockbroking as a team at Star Valley High School. And had I finished in the economics program, we had a full ride to the University of Wyoming. Upon moving, I couldn't continue that. And my parents were not fine with me staying with a friend for 18 months and finishing high school. And I understand that now. But I was pretty upset. And then I moved to Preston, and I got enrolled in accounting. And I was in accounting 3 as a junior when I left Wyoming. And there's only accounting in Preston. And the teacher was like, hey, I'm just here to coach baseball. I just have to teach something so I can coach baseball. So you know way more about accounting than me. So maybe you can help me teach my class. And I was instantly deflated that, well, I have nothing to learn here. Like, the school's telling me I know more than they do about what I'm studying. And so I just kind of fell in with, the group of friends that picked me up immediately, which, was actually the predominant group of people at that school. But everyone just kind of got into partying, got into some drugs, never really got into drinking, which was good because that's what got everybody in trouble. I had friends that are still haven't been able to leave Preston because of an alcohol problem in high school. Gets you on probation, and then they get you in the system. It's so hard to ever get out. But I got into trouble, was super mad at my parents, staying out late, eventually got caught sneaking back in one night. And I snuck in and saw that a drawer where I had, a bag of weed sitting in there was open and it was gone. So I knew they had found it, knew I had snuck out. I just left back out my window and took off. I actually was gone for a couple months, kind of, ran away from home, talked to my mom, kept a good relationship with her, she knew where I was. Me and my dad really were at odds during that time. He was kind of like, yeah, we can't have you in our house. I had 5 siblings. I was the oldest. And I understand that too, but definitely on a path for, the same type of thing as your story. I would have ended up dead or in jail or incarcerated or, whatever, or in a much different life than I found myself in now. But one thing that really got me through that time was my family and how I was raised. My grandpa passed away when I was, I would say 17. And there was a couple times where I had that same type of moment where I heard a voice as clear as day, kind of like in your story, where, I was almost to a party and I just heard this voice that turn around. And I just told my friends, we got to turn around. And they're like, why? I'm like, turn around. And so we turned around. Well, that party had gotten busted a few minutes before. Everyone, got in, arrested, whatever, for what the underage drinking, whatever they had on them, got saved in that instance. And there were a couple more instances where I just felt that I had a guardian angel out there watching out for me and that there was a bigger purpose in the universe for me. And when I started this cooking job, I really took a big inspiration from the chef and owner and his story, and decided that really wasn't, that kind of life wasn't conducive with what I wanted for my goals now, and was able to make a change really just on my own. Same type of thing, gave up a group of friends, changed habits, started working out. And music was also something that has always been huge for me, and also is conducive with the restaurant world. Most people in the restaurant world, especially chefs, maybe it's the creative aspect of it, are really into music, the arts, other sort of creation. But I ended up reconciling with my parents, and my dad gave me an apology. I apologized to him. We had a great moment. I was his first child. I made a ton of mistakes. He made a ton of mistakes, but we're on great terms now. He helped me open my first restaurant. He helped me open Provisions. They've been there to support me through pretty much everything. But I did end up leaving the church. Back to your question. Sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place.
But this is great.
I did leave the church. We actually, right around that same time when I was 16, me and some friends were smoking cigarettes during church out by the baseball bleachers there. And the bishop caught us, dragged us into his office, and told us not to ever come back. And we're just like, okay, sweet. We don't have to come back. Like the bishop says, don't come back. So I told my parents, and they were upset at the bishop. They were just like, that's just unacceptable. They're talking to the state president. They're like, this is a place, how are you supposed to help someone when you tell them they're not welcome there now? And I don't think that's the predominant thing in the church. I've been to different wards where they say, we want to smell cigarette smoke in our church, because that means there's people here that we can help and that should be here. The people that don't need to be here are the ones that don't need help. Like, we're happy everyone's here, but the people we really want here, that Jesus would want here, are people that can be helped and that need to be here, that, people that are suffering, have addictions, have problems. But anyway, I didn't go back. I had kind of always been a bit of a free thinker outside of the church, though, where as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, the idea of a mission just didn't suit me. The idea that everything had to be so black and white, in like, you're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. And that's just like a lot of fear in that. I ended up realizing that wasn't the case with a lot of the church in general later. But at the time when I was a kid, I knew that potentially wasn't going to be for me when I grew up anyway. But yeah, that was kind of when I left at 16. I did end up going back for a while, and I'm still, I would actually say maybe I'm more of a Christian now, but I'm still, I still believe in my higher power. I believe in Jesus. That's what we teach in our house on a different level. But I did end up going back for a while right after my first divorce, because after that was really hard on me when I lost my kids. They moved down here. I made a lot of mistakes in that marriage. We both did. That's how it works. But I was left alone in Sun Valley, 5 hours away. I had access to all kinds of, wine, beer, whatever, because I had my own restaurant there. That's just kind of especially that ski community.
Absolutely.
It's a big party town, even though it has a very great group of people live there. It's very influential. A lot of money is up there, which is what makes a lot of restaurants great up there. But I realized pretty quick after about 3 weeks after my separation of feeling sorry for myself, drinking, that I was going to end up ruining everything again for a second time if I didn't stop. And so I quit drinking during the time that I needed to recover and grieve that marriage and be there to focus on my restaurant, and the time it took to travel, commute, to see my kids, somehow be able to make that work. I had to have a clear mind. So again, I cut out alcohol until, it was about a year or two after I moved back here that I started drinking wine again, stuff like that. I mean, I'm a huge wine lover. It's one of my passions, which is almost a requirement for a good restaurant owner and a chef, to be able to have a palate for wine, understand its importance. But alcohol for me, I didn't drink, like I mentioned before, as a kid. I didn't drink till I turned 21. So my 21st birthday, I went out and had some drinks, and I just drank moderately. There's some people in my life that were alcoholics, and I never wanted to get to that point. And so people close to me that had, but that was never a problem for me. I've always been to be able to have a glass or two of wine at dinner, a couple beers at a basketball game, a concert, and that's good for me. I actually don't like the feeling of being drunk. That's not a pleasant feeling. And so I didn't really understand people that I knew there has to be an addiction and more to it when they drink to black out and get drunk and be hungover. Like it's a trap. But
that's me, and hats off to you. I mean, it could be so easy to fall into that addiction, right?
Especially when it's all around you.
You think that it's going to help, and it really just makes things worse, which makes you want to keep drinking. So hats off to you making that decision, not just for you, but for your kids. I'm sure.
Thank you.
I'm sure your kids appreciate that. Like, Dad went out of his way to make us a priority. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's, of all the things that my kids, they for sure know I love them and that they're my priority, and that I've done everything I possibly can for them.
Absolutely.
And in the face of a very toxic divorce, a toxic, ex, been in and out of family court this whole time. In fact, we just finally had another resolution a couple weeks ago in family court. So it's, divorce is a tough thing for kids and for everybody involved.
Absolutely.
As your parents got divorced. So
of course
that didn't happen to me. My parents are still together. But yeah, divorce is a hard thing.
Absolutely. But on the other flip side that I want to recognize is you and your dad having a conversation. Your mom as well, of course. That's sometimes a simple conversation. A simple apology can go so far.
It can, yeah. My dad was raised, as a lot of people of his generation were, especially so I grew up on a dairy farm in Wyoming. And my dad took over that dairy farm from his dad, who started it in the 20s in Wyoming. And he was raised very, very strict, very much like, my grandpa's job as a dad was to teach him how to work, provide for the family, discipline when needed, and that's pretty much it. And there was a lot of physical abuse that my dad and his brothers went through. And I think at the time it was pretty common for there to be a pretty heavy hand when it came to that. And that translated to me when I was a kid. Not to the same extreme that my dad endured, but more than you could get away with now.
Absolutely.
And he apologized to me for it, in tears, hugging me and just like taking accountability for it. And it's something that my little brothers did not have to go through. I think because of kind of, I was happy I was able to bear the burden of that and help him change so that they were able to live a happier childhood. Because I didn't grow up feeling that I had a close friend in my dad or a closeness at all. It was me and my mom were very close. He worked. I'd be honestly a little bit scared when he would come back in every night, like what was going to happen. Growing up on a farm is tough for him. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you're on call, you're working. Animals need to eat. There's no days off. And so that's why he sold the farm when I was 16. My little brother was 14. And we had a similar story because we're so close in age. But he sold it because the stress was, he could tell, killing his family. And he wanted a different life. So he sold it, got a job in Cache Valley as a partner in a tractor business, selling new tractors to farmers, stuff he knew really well. And he's also a really great at engineering and building things. And so he's had a lot of great jobs and careers since then. And it's been a big change for him. He has some days off. He can enjoy nights with his family. He can, was able to make the transformation that really helped the rest of our family succeed. So, absolutely. Yeah, and I really respect him for that because it's not easy to go through, to have to change and admit that kind of what you've been doing for a lot of years was the wrong way and what had happened to you. And, as a kid, I'd always, in my mind, like I always wanted to be a dad. And it was though I will be the opposite of my dad. But then as I'm older, there's a lot of things I've taken from my dad that I wish I could teach my kids as easy. Or well, not as easy, but I wish I had the ability to teach them in a way that he was able to teach me. Growing up on a farm teaches you how to work in a way that almost no other childhood can. Everything else in life seems pretty easy when you've been getting up at 4 and 5 a.m. every day of the week before school to go milk cows and feed calves, and then come shower, then get on the bus for 30 minutes to school, come straight home at 4 o'clock to have to do the same thing, feed the calves, milk the cows. It cut me out of sports. It cut me out of a lot of activities because those responsibilities came first, and we had to, we worked together as a family on that. It was a different life. I just envied, my cousins that grew up in Salt Lake that were able to sleep till 6:30 or 7 before school and have, just a different, completely different life. But the ability and him teaching me to work was one of the greatest gifts he ever gave me. And my ability to just feel like, I don't know, I love to work. I love to stay busy. And that's a hard thing to teach kids nowadays. Yeah, it really is.
AI.
Yeah, AI, and especially in the age of smartphones and ease and convenience. I didn't have any of that growing up. And I'm actually grateful for that childhood because it helped me survive a lot of hard things. It helped me get to where I'm at today without, I don't know. I'm a little worried sometimes about the younger generation right now.
Absolutely.
And what their future holds.
And if you don't mind me asking, I want to go back to the day you left. Would you say that you left because you were scared of your father at that point, or because you got caught?
I was definitely scared of my father. And I knew that point on would be unbearable for me to stay there after him kind of finding that and seeing what, from his point of view, what I brought into his house, what the kids might have found and been exposed to. Though, marijuana is people have different opinions on that, but I was definitely scared. And I was also sad because me and my mom have always been close. I knew that it would be really hard for her. I grew up not really thinking, and even at that point, at 16, I didn't really think that. I knew my dad loved me in a sense of duty and in a sense of he worked hard to provide for us. But I didn't feel like, I wasn't close to him at all. I didn't really feel like he, I don't know, maybe liked me is a better word. Like, I didn't know if he really liked me and enjoyed hanging out with me. We didn't do a lot of things together. He was so busy working as a kid. I learned how to play basketball with my neighbor's dad, and I learned how to throw a baseball with my mom. And she would, and I was big into baseball as a kid, and she was the one that was always practicing with me and very close to me. But definitely, I was definitely scared of my dad. There's no way that it would have been livable for me after that point.
Sure.
And I actually never fully went back. I went back for a little bit because that was between my junior and senior year. And I went back for a bit during my senior year, but ended up being there very rarely. And that was kind of a mutual agreement that I just wouldn't be able to have too much of an influence on my siblings and what they perceived would be a negative influence. Though I think it ended up being a pretty positive thing for my siblings as well.
Absolutely. And I'm sure when you and your dad had that conversation, I'm sure that was healing in a sense for you as well.
It was. Yeah.
Well, and I would love to hear about that. Like what thoughts, what emotions did you have when you had that conversation?
That was one of the first times I actually kind of believed what he was saying to me when he said that he loved me. I got lots of those after I would get like a pretty severe punishment as a kid. That's when I would hear, hey, I love you. I had to do this because I love you. But I didn't hear those kind of words just on a daily or as when things were good. So to me, I didn't really believe him. I thought it was just saying it to say it. In that conversation, and he talked to me about his childhood and about what he'd gone through and how sorry he was and how he really did love me. And, I could just feel the authenticity in that from him. And I knew that was hard for him because like most of us, I knew that was hard on his pride to do that, especially after kind of what I'd put him through from 16 to 18. And this happened once I was 18. So it was a couple years after things got pretty crazy. We didn't speak for probably most of that 2 years. We didn't speak. And I would go home and see my mom and little brothers and sisters when he wasn't there, stuff like that. So, and it was something that I think my mom helped push, I'm sure, and that I wasn't actually open to. There was a time where I didn't know if we would speak again. And I'm really glad that he chose to do that. And that was a whole nother side that I'd never seen of him. And he made major changes. He did not actually, what he says, he kind of changed a little bit too far maybe, and was too lenient on some of my younger siblings. But either way, my younger siblings knew that they were loved. It was a much different home environment for them. And being able to see him also walk the walk after talking the talk with me was pretty amazing and a pretty great example, and helped reaffirm that what he was saying to me was true.
And after that, you guys just have developed a better relationship, starting a restaurants with your dad. That's amazing. He's taken the leap and the risk to invest in me. He's, which, a lot of people don't do, and it's a risky business, and getting into business with a family can be tricky, but he's always been there to support me. And there's been, it's never easy, and it's not a, super lucrative business, especially during your first one. So yeah, he really, I think, has made the effort to make that change for, not only me, but for himself, I'm sure. Because as a dad now,
that would be one of the major reasons that I would do that, would be to feel, to affirm, my worth as a dad, or my value, and to make sure that my kids knew that I love them, and that they, I had their back no matter what. So, and I make it a point now to, and I always have, I tell my kids I love them every single day, every time I see them, every time I leave them, maybe annoyingly so, but my oldest son is 16 now, and it's easy for him. He's just always like, love you, dad, no matter what. He can be with this group of friends, on the phone with me, on a date. He'll ask me a question or whatever, call me, and I'm like, all right, love you, son, love you, dad. It's just something I never had, and I'm grateful that it's so easy. In fact, it's still not that easy for me and my dad to say that to each other, but it's, I know it's there, and it's not how he was raised at all.
Absolutely.
So it's not a normal thing for him. And he, this happened, his changes, started in his mid 30s. So that's a long time to have built-in habits and beliefs.
And what a beautiful thing to change at 35.
Yeah.
They say that you seldomly change after 25. You've just had enough times that you're so many hardwires in your brain, which is the psychology of that, right? And so for him to consciously, you change off of immense pain or pleasure. Sounds like at that point it was immense pain, that he loved you enough to swallow his pride and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think maybe turning 18 had something to do with it. At that point, it was kind of like, he realized that there wasn't anything to prove anymore at this point, and I didn't have to ever come back. And if I was him, I would have felt like the chance to ever have a relationship was slipping away at that point. Absolutely. So I think the timing in it all was good. I'm grateful for all the challenges that I've had in my life, and don't really hold resentment for. I try not to hold resentment for anything.
Good.
So
when did you find your initial chef mentor, the restaurant owner? What age were you then?
So I was 17. And I had actually just came home to grab something from my house, from my parents. And that was kind of when I was somewhat living there, but kind of not. I was staying at some friends' houses, almost kind of transient, and just kind of finished high school that way. I finished it early. It was super easy. And, I don't want to, bash, a certain high school, but coming from, Star Valley High School, which Wyoming has the most amount of money per student of any state in the nation because of the limited population and the massive amount of state revenue. The teachers make double what they made in Preston. And honestly, Idaho has some of the lowest paid teachers and the lowest budgets, but the school showed, and it was easy to kind of finish and coast along and be done. So I just came home to grab something. I had long hair at this time, Grateful Dead tie-dye on. I was, playing music, hanging out with my friends who were in bands. We were going to a lot of concerts, just kind of, living a little bit of a party life. And he spotted me right off, and he happened to have a Grateful Dead shirt on, which, gave him a sense of it made me feel like, whoa, who's this guy talking to my dad wearing a Grateful Dead shirt?
Absolutely.
It was one of my favorite bands at the time. Has been my whole life, from one of my uncles. But so then, I think he was probably inspired, whether he knew it or not, wearing that shirt that day to my parents' house. And he was there for a church thing. He was there to talk, like home teaching or something. And he just wanted to talk to me for a minute. I'm sure my parents had told him that, as their home teacher, that I was kind of estranged and not living at home. And maybe my mom had timed it that way, who knows. But that's where I initially met him. And I had talked to one of his managers prior about working in the restaurant, and just decided not to. One of my best friends was one of the chefs there. And a couple guys I really admired that were in a couple local bands I loved were some of the main sous chefs there. And they went on to be an inspiration for me for the next few years, and really get me into the music scene. That also helped kind of, I guess, save my life, for lack of a better word, and draw me away from no purpose into having music as a major purpose. So
That's amazing. And then the journey began after 17 of just food, being in
Pretty
the food
much
industry.
in the food industry, and I was really into music, so it was kind of going to concerts and playing music and cooking, and I was just focused on, on my career. And I have never been fired. I've never been let go. Every job I've ever had, including leaving his restaurants after, I worked at one till I was 19, then moved to Logan and ran one of his new restaurants he opened till I turned 21. And then I knew I needed to get to Park City or somewhere that had more advanced food for me to really grow my career. So put in my notice, finished out with him, moved to Park City in 2000. That's when I turned 21. 2 years before the Olympics, right after Y2K. Moved to Park City with some friends. They actually all worked for me in my restaurant in Logan. They went down there with me. Worked at the restaurant I worked at. There's a place called the Gamekeeper's Grill that's no longer there. It's where Tupelo is there now, if you're familiar with Park City. It had a lot of great restaurants in it. Silver was there for a while. But the Gamekeeper's Grill, the owner's wife was the sister of Ted Turner. So, her brother was a billionaire and gave him a big chunk of money to open this restaurant. It was beautiful. The chairs actually had like stretched leopard skin with like tusk. You couldn't really get away with it now with PETA. I think that's probably one reason they ended up leaving, but it was just amazing. We served all kinds of exotic food. We actually had lion in there at one point.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, which was a lion right there. But yeah, it was a great job. I learned a lot there. Then I picked up a part-time job at the Canyons ski resort so I could get my ski pass. And they ended up promoting me pretty quick to the sous chef of Lookout Lodge, which sits up on top of the mountain and does fine dining. And so I left the Gamekeeper's Grill down to part-time and then did this. Well, my chef there got fired for sexual harassment, which is another problem in the restaurant business, or can be. And they asked me to take his job, and I was barely 22. And I took over as the executive chef of Lookout Cabin and won a couple awards. This was going into the Olympics, and we hosted NBC at the Canyons. So Tom Brokaw did his broadcast out of Lookout Cabin every night. We got to meet, work with Conan O'Brien, Jay Leno, Katie Couric, and Matt Lauer did their morning show out of the Grand Summit every morning. It was a great experience, and just had a lot of great opportunities following that. So I've been really fortunate, but really it all kind of came from that ability to work hard. And my dad taught me to work hard, and it just opened up a lot of doors for me. And then just doing things right and with intention, so not, I didn't cut corners. I did things like people want them to be done, and then looked for ways to get better, to just show them, to, increase my value, to them. So I was, I've always been a morning person, which is odd for a chef too. It would drive my friends crazy that worked for me, because up there you'd have to be up at 6 a.m. to get up to the ski resort, ride the ski lift up, or drive a truck up in the summer. But that kept me from, late nights, kept me out of trouble. So it was a gift to just really be able to find something at 17 that just pointed the North Star so straight for me that everything after that had to follow that North Star of learning as much as I could and getting as many connections as I could and building as much faith in me from people who I knew in the future could help me, open restaurants or, help me be better. So it was, I think everything kind of happens for a reason.
Absolutely. And in the restaurant, it's farm to table, right? It doesn't sound just like the food gets there.
Yep.
So based upon you growing up on a farm, has that molded you in the restaurant world and chef world from what you know from the past?
It definitely gave me a whole different insight, knowing where, food comes from. I grew up on a farm. It was a big dairy farm. We had about 1,000 dairy cows and about 500-ish at a time beef cows. So we did both. some points we'd have chickens, goats, horses, all kinds of stuff. But it definitely gave me a pretty good insight that a lot of people just didn't have with where food came from and what it takes to grow food and the respect that you need to have for food. And I worked for a couple of chefs who kind of had that same mentality, but not everybody does. The successful ones do. That, when you burn a piece of steak or you overcook a piece of salmon, like, you're not just losing the money for the restaurant in that. You're wasting the time and disrespecting the people who grew that cow, caught that fish, took the care to get that beautiful salmon from, Alaska all the way to our kitchen, beautifully filleted and ready to go, and to respect every single ingredient that we have. And I also grew up with a mom who made everything from scratch. So, she made bread, our granola, jams. There was nothing that we had that had preservatives in it. We didn't eat breakfast cereal. And as a kid growing up in the 80s and that was, Saturday morning cartoons is full of breakfast commercials, breakfast cereal commercials. So we would get it on our birthday. We could pick a cereal. So I get a box of honeycomb on my birthday. And then on Christmas morning, they would buy something like Honey Nut Cheerios. So that was like 2 times a year. The rest, my mom would have, bacon, eggs, pancakes, waffles, French toast, German pancakes, homemade bread every day after school. And to me, I hated it. Now I'm like, man, what a gift, to be raised on that kind of food too. That wasn't, it's so hard now with our kids to get them to even eat things that aren't processed.
Or having red dye in your jams.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's
and
a
full
real
of sugar and addictive things, and the cereals they want and the drinks, and always wanting, swig on every corner they want to go to. And well, today it's only $1 or it's free. I'm like, well, great. Free, high fructose corn syrup, but yeah, it was a gift. And growing up, I would actually cook with my mom or my grandma desserts a lot, because if I wanted a treat, I pretty much had to make it. That was different. So I actually cooked a lot when I was a kid, mostly cookies, brownies, cakes, stuff like that. But it never crossed my mind once that I would be doing that in the future for money. It was more of just a need to want to have something a little bit different. But my grandparents, both my grandmothers were the same way, cooked everything from scratch.
That's amazing.
So
is there anything in your current restaurants that was inspired by learning how to cook from your mom?
Yeah, there's actually a couple things. So the Dutch Baby that's at Sunday's Best and Provisions was inspired by the German pancakes that she would make for us all the time. And we learned how to make. Also, the biscuits and gravy is her recipe. And that was one of my favorite dinners growing up. So my mom made biscuits and gravy for dinner because my dad loved it. So it would be like Sunday night, probably twice a month, we would have biscuits and gravy. And it was one of my very favorite dinners. Every time I eat it now, I still think of those dinners as a kid. And then also our scones that are not currently actually on either menu, but they go on and off both with honey butter, very similar to, they're the classic Utah scone. But yeah, really remind me of being a kid, and I've used her recipes for the honey butter and the scones. So it's been, she has a lot of inspiration in my cooking.
In your cooking. My grandma specifically was a big cooker, and you say scones, it's like every holiday, scones was the thing. That makes me want to go have a scone.
Exactly. It's so fun to cook too, and with kids, you're frying them in the oil. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's neat to see that correlation, right? Because as somebody that goes to Sunday's Best all the time, it's fun to see that story from you. Like, hey, that Dutch Baby over there, like, that was inspired by Tyler's mom. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, thank you.
There's always story in art. And oftentimes people just see food as food, but it really is an art form. How to pair butter or this with this type of food. And you do a really good job with that.
Yeah, thank you. It took a lot of years of practice and stress. And when I was younger, it was very daunting. and scary to, I'd get like, I started making my own menus at 22. And so that was, a lot of reading cookbooks. I mean, I probably have close to 1,000 cookbooks at this point that I've collected over the years, and I buy them constantly still. I probably get 10 to 20. If they make that many, in a year, I'll get them if they're good. So I never stop learning, but it's become now where, it's just much easier, and it's easier for me to teach people that way. And I guess it's just the way it's supposed to be. You do it for 25, 26 years, then you're able to do things with much less, effort. I can just help make a menu with my sous chef in, 20 minutes. We can bang, it's great to be in this place that I used to look up to other chefs that would be able to have that ability. Just walk into a walk-in and say, okay, what's our special going to be tonight? And just, throw it together.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's a really fun part of the job too. And right now I don't get to cook as much at this point in my career as I used to, because there's a lot of managing people, a lot of creation of new concepts. Every time we open a new restaurant, like we have the new one opening in 10 days downtown. So I'll be doing a lot of cooking there for a couple weeks. Those are some of my favorite weeks of the year. And then, of course, once they get trained and they learn, it's kind of like, well, I got to take their training wheels off and let them roll with this so we can get on to getting St. George open and getting the next concept going. And that's been great, though, for my family on my marriage now. It's a whole different thing. I'm able to make my own schedule for the most part, be home for things that I need to be home for, much less, nights and weekend nights. So I have to be at work, because when you open multiple concepts, you have to be able to train and delegate, so you don't have to be at these locations or you can't open another one. Then you find once you get them all open and everybody's trained, you're just kind of helping people, coaching people, helping them grow, trying to improve, and creating new things. But it's been a huge gift for my family now. And I have a 7-year-old. He just turned 7. So me and my wife now have one together, and I have 2 kids from my previous marriage, and she has 3 from her previous marriage. So we have
it's a big family,
little Brady Bunch going on. And yeah, when we first got married, there was 5 kids, and they were all between 2 and 8. And so, right now they're all between 7 and almost 17. Because Jonah, our youngest, was born a couple years after we got married. So it's really fun having one together. It kind of brought the whole family together. And I feel like it makes everybody feel more united to have him there. So
we're all together. Absolutely. Yeah. That's amazing. So the one question that I have, right, you went through a lot through your childhood, and you've transitioned to being, as far as I'm concerned, if not the best, one of the best chefs in Utah. I mean, your guys' restaurants are our favorite. We love going to your guys' restaurants because it's unique. It's fun. I mean, yes, it's about the food, but also just the environment and your concepts.
The experience is what, how you feel.
Absolutely. Nevertheless, we're on a journey to authenticity, right? Where we don't just help people make their dreams come true. We help them do it in a fashion where they're able to be themselves. Through this process, well, maybe it's not like I did X, Y, Z, but what were some of the things that helped you find yourself as you became the person that you are today?
There's been, so many different kind of versions, I guess, of myself. I think, because you change so many times over your life. But never thinking that never wanting to stop learning has always been key for me. There's never been a point where I think I know, everything about any certain dish, even if I've done it for 20 years. There's got to be a way to do it better. Never stop learning. Ask for help. Being able to utilize the people around you to help your dreams come true. It is a big one. And really for me, just, I'm lucky that I love what I do. So it's almost just comes natural. But reminding myself, how fortunate I am, also reminding myself why I love what I do, and also staying in touch with, making sure I balance what I'm doing for work, even if I love it, with things that are also developing me outside of that. Sure. Spiritually, mentally, physically. I think having a focus on health that my mom gave me has been a really big strength. And then I haven't missed a snowboard season since I moved to Park City. And I haven't, there's certain things, music's a big outlet for me, but making sure I take time to pursue my hobbies and the things that bring me joy outside of my work has been, something that I think has helped me over the years. But is that kind of answering the question a little bit, or is there something?
Yeah, what I hear is choose to do what you love. Like, hey, I love music. I'm going to make that a part of my life. I love my kids. I'm going to make that a part of my life. I love cooking. I'm going to make that part of my life. And I'm going to keep getting better. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to build a community around myself. And that's what I love about authenticity is a lot of people make it this big grandiose thing when really it's just a choice. Like, do you like what you're doing or not? Do you like who you are or not? Do you like the relationships you have in your life or not? And if not, then go make it.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear from your story is I ask for help. I love what I do. I enjoy music. I enjoy wine. I enjoy my family, my wife, my kids. And that's what I lean into.
Yep. I think the way you're phrasing that kind of brings it into my mind that, and it's something I've actually realized since I was young, that if I want it, I can get it. And by working hard for it. And it was that way for me from the time I was little with things that I controlled in my life, even, in junior high, I started realizing, hey, if I want to get that girl to hang out with me, I can. And I figured out how, and I worked for it, and I would make it happen. In high school, the same thing. Or if I want, I think, because as a kid, when at least a teenager, as you start getting some freedom, probably girls are probably the number one thing you set your sights on. But I realized, if I wanted to, I could figure out how to make that happen, and was almost able to date who I wanted. And when I got out of high school and I learned how to play an instrument, I set my sights on it. I was able to do it. I became good at a bunch of sports when I was younger. And so I think just having the belief in yourself that you can do whatever you want to do, and knowing that you really do have that power to, the universe wants to give us what we want if we're willing to take it and work for it. And we're all, I think, given that gift, but a lot of people don't believe maybe that they're worthy of that or whatever it may be. And I think there's been times in my life where I've felt that way, but then, like I said, I remind myself, I come back around. I'm grateful. I've always had an attitude of being grateful, and an attitude of, because I grew up very simple. I'm grateful for the things I have now. I don't take them for granted, but that's kind of what, when I first met my wife, now we went out on our first date, and I'm like, oh, this is who I'm going to be with forever. I knew, like, right on our first date, within 20 minutes, I hurried and canceled the rest of the Tinder dates I had lined up at that time. I've been divorced about 3 years and hated the dating scene. And she was just like this diamond. And then I just knew right away, I'm going to make this happen. And I made it happen. And then we just decided, okay, we're going to open this restaurant. Okay, we're going to create it. We're going to make it happen. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to buy this house. My wife's like, I don't know how we pulled that off with also opening a restaurant. We were able to get this house. I'm like, I don't either, but we made it happen. Just, laying out goals, laying out a plan, sticking to that plan, and taking risks, believing in yourself, which is not always easy. That's kind of the opposite personality of my dad. He is not a big risk taker. So some things can make him a little bit nervous. There's some people don't have a stomach for taking big risks, and kind of what me and Michael have been, trying to create. We both have that in common. We're willing to, we believe that we can make it happen. We know we're going to make it successful. Why not? Why would we not do it? I would rather take that risk than, sit around wondering why we didn't 20 years from now.
And what I see is you guys have a proven, you have something that works. Just got to do it time and time again. It's different, but you've been in the industry for so long. Michael McHenry's been in the industry as well for quite some time, where it's both of you guys together. You guys are a mastermind in the restaurant world. Yeah,
we brought a lot of different skills to our partnership. I've always been in fine dining, and more high end, which Sunday's Best is a morph of casual dining and fine dining, and that's exactly what we went out to accomplish. And that's one reason that when I first started seeing Michael on Instagram in 2015 and 16 with Even Stevens, I'm like, I'm realizing that I need to create a better future for myself and for my kids, to where having one restaurant is just not going to do it. And what am I going to have after 25 years of operating an amazing restaurant? Yeah, I'll probably had a great salary, great experiences, but at the end of it, that's it, because no one else can run that like you. And so I'm like, I need to get into some casual dining, and I've got all these ideas for concepts, and but I don't have all my experiences in, high-end hospitality, and not, taking a brand, opening 6 of them, and making a meaningful exit. And that's what Michael, specializes in, and helped a lot of other brands do before we started doing our own. And I saw him, and then I was a guest judge on Teen Chef Pro, and he was the host. And I just went up to him and was like, hey, we need to do a restaurant together. I got some fast casual ideas. What do you got going? And he didn't make me, I don't think take a lot of that to heart yet. We just kind of first met, but then later on the show, he kind of asked me what was going to be next for me after the show was over. I'm like, well, we're doing a restaurant together, and it ended up same type of thing I guess I've done my whole life. I envisioned that's what was going to happen, and it worked. It made it happen. and it's been a great partnership, and he has definitely, helped me learn and grow in a lot of ways when it comes to managing things at scale, and letting go a little bit of, the control, because doing one restaurant at a time, or being an executive chef of a really nice restaurant, you're in complete control of, everything that happens. But kind of letting that go a little bit for the greater good, and being able to train and teach people and empower them to hopefully reproduce what you produce has been fantastic. And you can't really do that in really high-end fine dining. That's why you don't see, there's one French Laundry and one Per Se, and that Thomas Keller has 2 fine dining restaurants, and that's it. But you can't scale something like that because it's just too, I don't know, it has to be that person. Barbecue's that way too. Barbecue's a hard one to scale, but and do it well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys have done an amazing job, and just time and time again, you're saying like, hey, you see it, figure out the plan on how to get there, or at least have a rough idea, and then go make it happen.
Don't be scared. Like, believe in yourself and take risks and just make it happen. And we have both spent, and I speak for myself, many sleepless nights, many anxiety-ridden moments of, wow, what have we just got ourselves into? Wow, like what is going to happen? I mean, COVID was crazy. There's just things out of our control, and even beyond that. But you formulate a plan, believe in yourself, and you work. You go out and you get it done.
Absolutely. So this is more of a, well, it just actually left my mind. How did I forget that? It's going to come back to me because it was there. Anyways, nice. So we got Sunday's Best in Sandy.
Yep.
You got one opening up in downtown. Yep. And then you're opening the next one in St. George. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you have the one in there.
We have one in the airport that we opened in October. And downtown Sunday's Best is 6,500 square feet, so twice as big as Sandy. In the heart of downtown in the New Post District. Upstairs, we're going to be opening Sunday School, which is another new concept for us that just kind of was created in the design process with our designer, amazing design team. And they kind of were like, what are we going to do upstairs? We got 2 levels. We want to do a different experience. We want this, we want that. And we're thinking maybe a bar or a club or a brunch club, or just mulling ideas. And the designer's just like, well, if you do something, being in Utah and Salt Lake, you should call it Sunday School. And I'm just like, we're taking that. We're using that. Thank you. And we, from there, we continued to just develop and create this concept that's going to be a brunch club on the weekends, but open 7 nights a week for small plates, shareables. A menu is kind of similar to Provisions, a little bit more on the high end, but fun shareable snacks and a few entrees, fantastic drinks. Giancarlo, who does our drinks at Sunday's Best, and he helped me open Provisions. And he also helped open a handful of bars around town, is taking the lead on the beverage program. And going to have great music, great vibes, and just kind of have a little bit of fun with a lot of the, maybe the dogma and the stigma that a lot of people grew up with, but not just LDS. We're having fun with we're having fun with religious things of all religions.
Absolutely,
no one's discriminated against. and our DJ booth up there has big organs behind it, cool. Similar to the tabernacle, and this beautiful booth with a little altar on it almost, and we'll be almost like a little pulpit. And I got into mixing music a couple years ago. My wife's doing it now, so we'll be DJing there.
I want to come see you DJ.
Our new hobby. We've done some Sunday's Best parties, and I've done some stuff during Sundance, and we do some small things. But yeah, we love it, and we're both really into music. That's a big connection for us to begin with. And I grew up playing guitar. I play bass. I started playing drums in my early 20s. Drums became my thing. But above all, when you're mixing music and wanting to be a DJ, you need to just know music. That's really all that you need to do to be a good DJ, is know a wide variety of music, and then also be able to help know when to play that music, fit the moment, fit the vibe. And so anyway, yeah, we're really excited for Sunday School. I get to present my food, and we'll get to present some, participate in the music. So it's a big space, though. It's 10,000 square feet. It's the biggest project we've ever done. The most expensive, the most work, the most beautiful, the coolest. We couldn't be more proud. We couldn't be more certain that this is, legacy changing for us.
I'm excited to see it, genuinely.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We're coming up on it. And then St. George is next.
Do you anything outside of Sunday's Best that you're working on?
So we opened Noodlehead about a year ago at Mill Creek Common, and it's a fast casual. It does noodles from all over Southeast Asia. We've got small plates, very simple, and we're looking to grow that after we get these Sunday's Best open. And then I'm also working on a wood fire pizza concept.
That pizza.
So
yeah, wood-fired pizza. Sign me up.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Some of my favorite restaurants, one of my favorite restaurants in the country is Roberta's in Brooklyn, and they have one in LA that we go to more often because we're there more. But it's just, I wish there was something like that here, and there will be soon, where the focus is on just amazing pizza, but they have great small plates, a great natural wine list. And I'm a wine geek. I could spend 4 hours just talking about wine, but where pizza is the focus and everything else kind of comes after that. And overall, the bird is, and what we do in our restaurants, connection. And that's how they make you feel there. It's a place that's fun. You feel good there. You're treated good there. Not pretentious, which has been a big welcome change in the restaurant industry as a whole. I feel like the past 10 years is moving away from kind of the pretentious side of fine dining. Even fine dining restaurants are more casual now, which is great. I think that's how it should be. I mean, food should not be exclusive to a certain group of people, and food should be fun and dining. There's a time and a place for everything. And I'm grateful for places like Per Se and the French Laundry and the experiences that I get to have there, because those are out of this world. But we love creating spaces where people can get together, have fun, spend time with the people they love, and just create memories.
Absolutely. So I have more of a curious question. What is it like being a high-end chef going to other restaurants?
It's one of the best parts of my job.
You like it?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And that's one of the biggest perks, is that not only is it something we're expected to do, and you should do if you want to ever grow as a chef or restaurateur, you need to go see what people better than you are doing, what people maybe not better than you were doing, but go see and explore and see what people who are at the height and the pinnacle of excellence in your industry are doing. And it's, really part of your process. And a lot of chefs do it, a lot don't. I think the successful ones do, but it's crazy. When we went to Per Se a couple years ago in New York, I just made the reservation, like 9 months in advance, made it through email, never said another word. When I got there, they're like, "Welcome, chef. We got a special table for you by the kitchen." And they knew who I was. They knew about my restaurants, and they took me on a tour of the kitchen, gave us a special table, and they did all that on their own. And that's
amazing.
Yeah, that's how they, Per Se Googles and researches every guest on their list months in advance. As soon as the reservation is made, and they know exactly. And a lot of restaurants do that, but it's nice. It's happened to me in LA at a handful of places, because people they pay attention, and it's a common thing in the industry to take care of other chefs. So when they come in, you want to style them out, impress them. When I first was dating my wife here in Salt Lake, I'd had Provisions open about 2 years, but I'd been gone from Salt Lake for about 8 years before in Sun Valley. But I knew most of the chefs here. There's some I just met when I came back, going to wine lunches, restaurant events. But everywhere we would go, I'd take her on dates. We would just be getting all this food that we didn't order. Oh, the chef sent you this, the chef sent you that. And she'd be like, "What is going on? Are you famous or something?" I'm like, "Well, here, but that's what I do for Takashi when he comes in to eat. That's what I do for, the different chefs when they come to Provisions. We're grateful our peers chose our restaurant to eat at. We want to style them out, make them feel the very, best way that we can. And that's continued. And it's fun when it happens out of town, especially. But, also I think going out with me, for me, is fun. I love going to restaurants, and I'm like, wow, look at that wallpaper. Look at that decoration. Look where they put those floating shelves behind the bar. Look what every restaurant I go to, I'm flipping the plates upside down, looking at the brand name, taking a picture of it, taking notes. Look at the silverware. Look at the way they folded the napkin. And I think it drives my wife crazy. She's like, "Can we just eat dinner?" Every time we come to a restaurant, you're like, so distracted with everything here. So I've had to work on finding that balance of where I'm like in the moment with her to enjoy it like they want normal people to enjoy it, but also, I don't want to miss this opportunity to see something cool and to learn something I can take back to Salt Lake and use to build our business, to make something better. Absolutely. And to make something, to help grow our scene here. Because that's really how Sunday's Best came about too, was Michael and I travel quite a bit together to other cities, and Miami and LA are two of our favorite food cities. And there's some restaurants there we absolutely love that we kind of morphed that vibe together into what Sunday's Best is. And, had it not been for us going to those spots, there would be no Sunday's Best. So it's a vital part of the process and getting and kind of helping bring culture and ideas and influence from around the country and, around the world for that matter to,
absolutely,
where we live and into our businesses. So
you guys have done a dang good job, to say the least, and that's putting it lightly. With that, just a couple of quick questions. So one, you've done the podcast, you've done speaking engagements, you've mentored tons of people. If all of that went away and you could leave one piece of advice for the young entrepreneurs of the world chasing their passions, their purposes, the way that you've done, what would that be?
Believe in yourself and don't listen to others. Believe in yourself. And, if there's a lot of noise out there constantly telling you, how hard it's going to be, you're going to fail. You should do it this way. You should do it that way. But take all that with a grain of salt and make sure it aligns with what you believe with yourself inside, but believe in yourself and develop yourself so that you trust yourself, have, be able to execute on what you want to do. So do the work to, I guess, maybe have integrity in what you want to do and not, but that all goes, I think, with believing in yourself and doing the work it takes to just do the very best that you can do with what you're doing. So I think just being intentional and believing in yourself, which I think can apply to anything you want to do. So that's, I think, been key for me. And just believe in yourself. Don't give up. Just keep going. It's hard, and it gets harder and harder, and it gets darkest and hardest right before a breakthrough happens. And that's the case with so many, entrepreneurs and people that have made it and people who didn't. But, I don't know, I would think that, trust yourself, love yourself, believe in yourself, take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
It's really key.
Simple. Us humans complicate things, don't we? Let's just keep it simple.
Keep it simple. And
really
discipline, I think, is something that if ever I find myself going out of alignment with my time management, or if something's slipping somewhere, it almost always goes back to me just needing to realign either my disciplines or help the disciplines of the people that I put in charge of a certain restaurant or whatever. But, just being little habits that you build that are good, just disciplines daily, just mean the world. What you do every morning, what you do to just remind yourself that you're important, like your little disciplines, you taking the time to make yourself look good. I like to do daily affirmations or read something every morning, working out, but just whatever your daily rituals and habits are, make sure they're benefiting your goals and not taking away from your goals, and focus on that discipline. Discipline for me has got me through a lot of things that motivation, comes and goes, but discipline is something that gets you through when you're not motivated. Absolutely. And it's easy. I know a lot of people say that, but it's a true thing. And it's, getting up when you don't want to get up, doing the thing you don't want to do when it needs to be done is really what I think builds that integrity in yourself to allow you to trust yourself, to believe in yourself and know that you can make this happen. So yeah, just don't stop, believe in yourself and make it happen.
Amen to that. And last question I have for you is, what is your definition of an authentic life?
Authentic life for me would be that you're doing what you want to do, whatever that may be, that you're happy doing it. Or if you're not happy doing it, you're working on achieving the thing that is going to make you happy, not, really just doing the things that you know you want to do and that are going to make you truly happy. Being, honest with yourself, having integrity in what you're doing, and not doing something because someone else tells you to do it, or doing it for someone else. And I found that, with religion when I was young, or with whatever, I'd find myself doing things that, well, I'm doing this to make my mom happy, or I'm doing this, but being true to yourself, and then seeing, that's where you build true faith in something, is doing it because you want to do it. Just being, unapologetic in getting what you want to have in your life, and being honest with yourself and those around you, and trying to be the person that you want to be, whether, a million people are watching, it's an Instagram reel everyone's going to see, or whether it's something you're doing at home by yourself and no one is around. The way you make a grilled cheese should be just as good, or whatever you want to do. But I think just being, very intentional in what you do, and, staying focused on what's going to make you happy and your dreams and your goals.
Amazing. You've done such an amazing job in Salt Lake City. You've made an impact on this community. So thank you. And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for joining the Journey to Authenticity podcast today. If you liked what both myself and Tyler had to say, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. This helps to ensure that we get the most interesting and highly qualified guests to help you come transform your life. Also, why I have you here, our Rooted and Rising community, which is more of a movement, has finally been launched. I'm so excited for this for a couple of reasons. One, we talk about who you're going to become. Who are you becoming? We help you build the relationships and a community around what you're doing, who you're becoming, and the dreams that you're chasing. And of course, we help you rise into whatever that dream life is. That in mind, if you're ready to jump in and transform your life, we would love to have you with the link below. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.